Hi, my name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have Wade Dunn joining us in the studio. Wade has joined the primary race, and he is running for House District 47. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Listen, for those of our viewers who may not know you or they're not familiar with your story, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run.
Okay, a little about myself. I have lived in Greenwood all my life. I've been married to my wife since 1982. We have one son, Dustin, and just had our first grandson. His name is John Paul. Career-wise, I spent 24 and a half years at Pepsi, just about every job, and served on a lot of community boards. I served on Mercy Hospital board. I served on the Carl Albert State College board, and I've always been involved in the community, and I've sat back and watched the way things are going on in this world and in this state, and decided it was time to try to do something about it myself.
Tell us a little bit about what caused you to get into the race. You know, we've heard from many Arkansans where they felt like over this past year, they really can't sit on the sidelines any longer. Is that?
That's where I'm at. I've always been involved in politics and voicing my opinion and being, I've gone to Little Rock a few times and testified, but, I've sat and I guess you might say sit on the sidelines and complain long enough that I decided to try to do something about it. And, I see that we are getting government is everybody that gets elected to a position becomes a government protectionist instead of a citizens protectionist. And I think that my belief is that government is there to serve the people, not people there to serve the government. So I want to be involved in that. The things that drive me is my faith in God and the fact that I am a Christ follower, and it's who I am. It's not something I'm saying to get elected. It's who I am. It's who I've been and who I will always be. And what I've been saying all along is if elected and there's a piece of legislation for me to make a decision on, first, I will look at it and say, what does God say about it? And second, I will say, what does the Constitution say about it? And that's the way I will decide. And it's just simple, but that's the way it should be.
So let's talk about the most recent session. We saw a lot happen in Little Rock over the past year. Give me your overall impression of the session.
Well, I think the session was, again, more government taking care of government instead of government taking care of people. But I guess the biggest concern that I had with this past session was House Bill 1570, where my opponent, Lee Johnson, voted to no on a bill that was to ban sex change surgery on adolescents. And that's just wrong on so many fronts. I know what God says about it. I don't know why he was influenced the way he was to vote the way he did, but obviously there was some man's influence on him, whether that was some association, medical association, or some individual. But I know where God would have told me to vote on that, and that was that adolescents don't need to be having sex change surgery.
Right. That was a contentious bill that happened there at the session. Of course, we saw Governor Hutchinson, attempt to veto it. Legislators came back and, they overrode that veto. But I think what you're saying, a lot of people would probably be surprised to know that Representative Johnson did not support that SAFE Act piece of legislation.
Yeah, I've talked to 400, 500 different people, and very, very few, 25 maybe out of that many people knew anything about that. And when they hear about it, they're very disappointed in it. But and it goes further than him making the decision to vote that way. I was actually texting with him the day of the veto override, trying to convince him to vote to override the veto, and he just wouldn't do it.
Wow. Let's also talk a little bit more about your opponent's track record. You are in a primary race where you do have an incumbent. A lot of times that can be hard to overcome. But let's talk about his record and how you would vote differently. We've seen, of course, that vote, a lot of tax increases. We've seen him vote against school choice legislation. What are your thoughts?
Well, everything, when you look at votes individually, it doesn't seem, it's not, they don't look too bad. But when you stack all of his voting record on top, it's a very liberal voting record. Whether it's school choice, whether it's gasoline tax, whether it's $300,000 tax increase in the 92nd General Assembly, internet tax, cell phone tax. It's just, I mean, if you look at his record, it's not a Republican record. It's a liberal record. I mean, he was ranked from, I think, from Conduit News in your survey, where you guys didn't survey Lee Johnson. You surveyed every legislator in Little Rock, and my opponent Lee Johnson was ranked 89, the lowest ranked Republican in the state of Arkansas. The people of Sebastian County deserve better than that. I mean, if we're going to elect a Republican, we expect them to vote as a Republican, not as a Democrat. He was ranked so low, he was in the group of all the Democrats.
That's right. Well, do you feel as though the constituents there in that district, not only do they know maybe perhaps the difference between the two of you, since you both are, saying that you are conservative Republicans, but do they really know what his voting record looks like?
I'm finding that a few people know what his voting record looks like. Not a lot. I mean, my opponent has not lived a very public life. In other words, he's lived a pretty much private life, not on social media. Now all of a sudden he is on social media with his campaign page, but his voting record is not understood. I can tell when talking to people that when I discuss his voting record and some of the bills he's voted for, they're just completely disgusted with it, especially House Bill 1570.
Right, because that's not even, hey, we're not even asking you to just align with the Republican Party platform. That vote went so far off of, the party platform. It's like, what is this vote? Yeah. So let's talk about some of the other big issues. Education. We've seen education just be at the forefront this past year. Tell us, where do you stand on school choice?
Well, school choice, people need to be able to determine where their children are educated. And if your children are in a school district that is teaching them things that you don't agree with, like critical race theory or whatever that may be, then you should have the ability to take them out and let that money follow the child. Mm-hmm. And that's another place where we differ. My opponent, Lee Johnson, he voted against school choice, but that is something that I would support.
Some other key issues, what would you say are the key issues that you're hearing from people in that district that would be at the forefront of your campaign?
Well, just the number of taxes that he's voted for. I think the 92nd General Assembly, he voted 6 taxes. And I mean, in fact, to my knowledge, to what I know, he has not voted against a tax increase.
And one thing that we say at Conduit is, you can talk about social issues all day long, but if you don't have economic freedom, if you're not limiting the role of government and their footprint, you don't have freedom, you're not free. Mm-hmm. And so, that is an important issue to Conduit as far as reducing taxes. Yeah. What else would you like people to know about your campaign? The primary election day will be here in May. Yeah. It'll be here very soon. What would you want people to know about your campaign?
Well, I made a post yesterday and I said May the 24th, which just happens to be my birthday, by the way. May the 24th, people's going to have a choice to make. And is it somebody, you've got to decide if you want to vote for somebody that is a big government protectionist, someone that's going to vote to tax every new opportunity and raise taxes, or do you want to vote for somebody that's truly a conservative, someone that's going to use godly principles in his decision making and not vote on these outlandish issues such as House Bill 1570, which was a sex change bill for adolescents? I mean, it makes it. I don't even like to talk about the bill because it's so far out there. I don't even like to discuss it, but it is what it is.
Well, and voters need to know.
And voters have to know. I mean, Sebastian County deserves to be represented by somebody that, if you're going to run as a Republican, you need to vote as a Republican. Don't vote as a Democrat if you're going to run as a Republican. And my promise to people, and I think I've said it already once, but if elected, I will vote based on what's God's word say about the piece of legislation that I'm looking at, and what's the Constitution say. And that's first my promise to God, and second my promise to the people.
How can people get involved in your campaign? Do you have a website, social media? Can they donate?
Yes, we do. We have a website that is just underway right now, and Facebook page. So you can find us on Facebook and on the website.
Okay, we will link that below.
Link that below. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We look forward to following your race, and keep us updated on the progress.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.